I was 3 seconds away from pulling the trigger when I saw my dead husband walk through the door with his arm around another woman. 3 seconds. That's all that stood between me and the moment I'd been planning for 10 years. 3 seconds between justice and vindication. 3 seconds between the old me and the person I'd become. The gun was already in my hand, its weight familiar now after months of practice at the range in Queens, where I'd told the instructor my name was Sarah Mitchell and that I was learning to shoot because of a stalker ex-boyfriend. The lies came so easily now. They tasted like nothing. My finger was on the trigger, applying just the right amount of pressure, not enough to fire, but enough to feel the resistance, to feel the power of what was about to happen. I'd practiced this exact motion hundreds of times. In my apartment. In front of the mirror. In my dreams. Adrian Volkov, the man I'd spent 10 years preparing to kill, was standing 2 feet away from me, his back turned, completely unaware. He was pouring himself a drink, scotch from the crystal decanter he kept on the bar cart by the window. The window that overlooked Central Park, because of course it did. Because men like Adrian Volkov got to have views of Central Park while men like my Ryan got dumped in the Hudson River like garbage. This was it. The moment I'd been living for. The moment that was supposed to make everything right again. I'd imagined this scene 1,000 different ways. Sometimes I shot him immediately, clean, efficient, professional. Sometimes I made him look at me first, made him see my face, made him understand who I really was before I pulled the trigger. Sometimes I told him exactly why he was about to die, made him feel the weight of what he'd done, made him beg. But I'd never imagined this. And then the door opened. The elevator door, because this was a penthouse and Adrian Volkov was the kind of man who had a private elevator that opened directly into his apartment. The kind of man who had security and money and power and everything he'd ever wanted while I'd had nothing but grief and rage and this gun in my hand. And my entire world shattered for the second time. Because there was Ryan. My Ryan. The man I'd buried. The man whose funeral I'd sat through in a black dress I'd bought at Target because we couldn't afford anything else. The man whose empty casket I'd watched them lower into the ground because there hadn't been enough of him left to recover, because the river and time and the Volkov family's efficiency had taken care of that. The man I'd cried over until I had nothing left inside me but rage. Walking. Breathing. Alive. Laughing at something the blonde woman next to him was saying, his head tilted the way it always did when he found something genuinely funny, not just politely amusing. I knew that tilt. I knew the exact angle of his smile. I knew the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. His hand resting on her lower back the way it used to rest on mine. Possessive and gentle at the same time, the way he'd touched me on our wedding day, the way he'd touched me every morning before he left for work, the way he'd touched me the last time I ever saw him alive. Except he hadn't been dying. He'd been leaving. The gun slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever, like a bell tolling, like the universe announcing that everything I'd believed was a lie. Adrian spun around, and he was fast, faster than I'd expected, his hand already moving toward his own weapon before he even saw what had made the noise. Security training, probably. Survival instincts honed by years of being exactly the kind of man people wanted to kill. People like me. His eyes went from me to the gun to my face, and I watched recognition dawn in his expression, not of who I really was, but of what I'd almost done. Not you're Maya Chin, the woman whose husband I killed 10 years ago, but you're the woman I've been sleeping with for 6 months and you just tried to murder me. Because that was the plan, you see. Make him fall in love with me. Or at least make him trust me. Get close enough that he'd let his guard down, that he'd bring me into his home, that he'd give me access to his life. And then end it. Maya, he said quietly, his voice steady even though he'd just been seconds from death, even though a loaded gun was now lying between us like evidence of everything I'd pretended not to be. What's going on? His calmness was almost insulting. Like this was a conversation about why I'd come home late or why I'd been distant at dinner. Like I hadn't just tried to kill him. But I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything except stare at the ghost who'd just destroyed everything. Ryan's eyes met mine across the room. The room that was too big, too expensive, too much like the life I'd never gotten to have with him. The room where I'd planned to kill the man I thought had taken everything from me. I watched the color drain from his face, watched the expression shift from casual happiness to recognition to something that looked almost like terror. His hand fell away from the blonde woman's back. His mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again, forming my name, though no sound came out. Just the shape of it, Claire. Not Maya. Claire. Because Maya was who I'd become. Mayachin was the woman who worked in art acquisitions, who'd met Adrian Volkov at a gallery opening, who liked expensive wine and wore designer clothes and had reinvented herself so completely that no one would ever connect her to Claire Morrison from Brooklyn. But he knew. And I realized with a sick, twisting certainty that he recognized me. Even after 10 years. Even after I'd changed everything about myself, my hair, my style, my accent, my entire existence. Even after I'd become someone else entirely. He knew. Ryan, the blonde woman said, her hand on his arm now, concern creeping into her voice. What's wrong? Do you know her? Do you know her? As if I was some stranger. As if I hadn't been his wife. As if I hadn't spent 2 years sharing his bed and his dreams and his terrible coffee every morning. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, standing in a Manhattan penthouse with a loaded gun at my feet and my entire life revealed as a lie. 10 years ago, I was a different person. Softer. Easier to break. I was 22 years old and married to my high school sweetheart, and I thought I knew what happiness was. I thought happiness was Sunday mornings and shared meals and the way Ryan's hand felt in mine. I thought it was enough to just love someone and be loved back. I was so stupid. Ryan and I had this tiny apartment in Brooklyn with windows that didn't quite close and neighbors who fought at 3 a.m, but it was ours. We were building something. We were in love. Or at least I was. And then one morning, he left for work and never came home. I remember that morning so clearly it still hurts. He kissed me goodbye at 7:42 a.m. I know because I looked at the clock. He'd said "Love you, Claire Bear," which was the ridiculous nickname he'd given me in high school and never stopped using. He'd grabbed his coffee, black, 2 sugars, and his jacket, and he'd walked out the door. And I never saw him again. For 3 days, I called everyone. His work. His friends. His mother, who cried with me on the phone and told me he'd come home, that boys like Ryan always came home. They found his car at the bottom of the Hudson River 3 days later. The police said it was a professional hit. Said he'd gotten mixed up with some dangerous people, that he owed money to the wrong crowd. They said the Volkov family was involved, that Adrian Volkov himself had ordered it. Detective Martinez had sat across from me in that interrogation room that they pretended was just an interview room, with its flickering fluorescent lights and coffee that tasted like regret. He'd had this expression on his face, pity mixed with resignation. Like he'd seen this story before. Like he knew how it ended. Mrs. Morrison, he'd said, and the name had sounded wrong already, like I was becoming someone else in real time. Your husband was involved in some things. Some people. The kind of people who don't leave loose ends. What people? I'd asked, my voice strange and distant. The Volkov organization. Adrian Volkov specifically. We have reason to believe your husband witnessed something he shouldn't have. Or knew something. Or, he'd paused. It doesn't really matter now. I'm sorry. I remember sitting in that police station, listening to them talk about my husband like he was already a case file, already forgotten. Another body in the river. Another unsolved murder that would get filed away and forgotten because no one really cared about a 24-year-old kid from Brooklyn who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I remember thinking that grief was supposed to feel like sadness. But it didn't. It felt like rage. It felt like a fire that started in my chest and spread until there was nothing else left of who I'd been. So I made a choice. I would make Adrian Volkov feel what I felt. I would make him love me the way I'd loved Ryan. And then I would take it all away. I would become his lover, his confidant, the woman he trusted most in the world. And then, when he was vulnerable and unsuspecting, I would kill him. I would look him in the eyes and I would make sure he knew exactly why he was dying. It took me 10 years to get here. 10 years of planning and preparing and becoming someone else entirely. 10 years of learning his world, his habits, his weaknesses. 10 years of rage simmering just below the surface of my carefully constructed smile. And now, standing in his penthouse with my dead husband alive and staring at me like I was the ghost. Now I had no idea what any of it meant. It took me 2 years just to get close. 2 years of watching from a distance, of studying him like he was a subject I needed to master for the most important exam of my life. 2 years of learning everything about him, about his world, about the kind of woman who could catch his attention. Not just any woman, the exact type who would slip past his defenses, who would make him forget to be careful. I changed my name to Maya. Not gradually, but all at once, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. Sophie Morrison died with Ryan. Maya Chin was born in her place, sleek, sophisticated, untouchable. Dyed my hair darker, almost black, because Sophie had been blonde and Ryan had loved running his fingers through those blonde curls. Maya's hair was straight and severe, cut at a sharp angle that framed her face like a weapon. Learn to walk differently, talk differently, become someone else entirely. I took classes, public speaking, wine tasting, art appreciation. All the things that Adrian Volkov's world valued. I read the books his circles read, learned the names they dropped casually over cocktails, memorized the difference between Burgundy and Bordeaux. The old me, Sophie, Ryan's wife, I buried her with the grief. Or at least, I tried to. Some nights I'd wake up and forget who I was supposed to be, would catch myself almost answering to the wrong name. Those nights were the hardest. Those nights, the rage was the only thing that kept me going. I got a job at his hotel. The Volkov Grand, a towering monument to wealth and excess in Midtown Manhattan. Started as a receptionist, worked my way up to event coordinator. Made sure I was visible but not desperate. Made sure I was interesting but not obvious. It was a delicate balance, that game I played. Too eager and I'd be just another woman throwing herself at a rich, powerful man. Too distant and I'd never even register on his radar. So I calibrated myself carefully, friendly but professional, attractive but not trying too hard, competent enough to be noticed but not so ambitious that I seemed threatening. And I waited. Waiting was its own special kind of torture. Every day I walked the halls of his hotel, knowing he was somewhere in the building, knowing that the man who'd killed my husband was breathing the same air I breathed. Some days I'd see him in the elevator or crossing the lobby, and I'd have to force myself to smile politely, to nod like he was just another wealthy guest, like my hands weren't aching to wrap around his throat. "You're very patient," my supervisor, Patricia, told me once. "Most of the girls here, they're always angling for a way to meet Mr. Volkov. But you? You just do your job. It's refreshing." If only she knew that patience was all I had left. That and rage, simmering just below my carefully composed surface. The first time Adrian actually noticed me, really noticed me, was during a wedding reception in the ballroom. There'd been a problem with the catering, they'd sent chicken instead of fish, and the bride was having a complete meltdown. I specifically said fish, she was shrieking, her face red and blotchy, her makeup running from angry tears. "Do you know how many of my guests are allergic to poultry? Do you have any idea what this wedding cost?" Her maid of honor was crying. The groom looked like he wanted to disappear. The catering manager was making excuses, his voice getting higher and more defensive with every word. And the wedding, this elaborate, expensive, months in the planning event, was falling apart in real time. I handled it quietly, efficiently, got a new vendor there within an hour, and somehow saved the entire event. I'd made 3 phone calls, one to a restaurant I knew had an excellent catering side business, one to our kitchen manager to coordinate logistics, and one to the hotel's sommelier to adjust the wine pairings for the menu change. Then I'd stood in front of the bride and her maid of honor and I'd said, in the calmest voice I could manage, "Give me 60 minutes. If I can't fix this, you can have your money back and sue the hotel. But I will fix this." Something in my voice must have convinced her, because she'd stopped crying and nodded. 57 minutes later, fresh salmon was being plated in our kitchen, prepared by a chef who'd called in 3 favors to make it happen. The wedding went off without another hitch. The bride hugged me and cried happy tears. The groom shook my hand and slipped me a $1,000 tip that I immediately donated to a domestic violence charity, because I couldn't stand to profit from Adrian Volkov's world. Adrian had been watching from the mezzanine. I didn't know it then. "That was impressive," he said later that night as I was leaving. He'd appeared out of nowhere, his presence filling the corridor, making the space feel suddenly smaller, the air thicker. "The way you handled that crisis." I'd frozen for just a second, less than a heartbeat, but enough that I had to fight to keep my face neutral. This was him. The man I'd been planning to destroy for 2 years. Standing right in front of me, close enough to touch, close enough to hurt. Just doing my job. I didn't let myself look too long. Didn't let myself seem too eager. Kept my voice level, professional, utterly unmoved. Most people panic. You got calmer. Panic doesn't fix problems. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, interest, maybe, or curiosity. He smiled at that. It was a good smile, warm and genuine in a way I hadn't expected. In a way that made him seem almost human. Not the monster I'd built up in my head over 2 years of careful planning. Just a man, tired from a long day, impressed by someone who'd done their job well. It made me hate him more. "You're Maya, right?" "That's right." My throat felt tight. He knew my name. My fake name, but still. He'd noticed me enough to ask someone, to remember. "I'm Adrian." "I know who you are, Mr. Volkov." Everyone knew who Adrian Volkov was. His family owned half of Manhattan's hospitality industry, and the other half wished they did. "Just Adrian is fine." He paused, studying me with those sharp gray eyes that seemed to see more than I wanted them to. "Would you have dinner with me sometime?" This was it. The opening I'd been waiting for. The moment when 2 years of planning started to pay off. But my heart was racing for all the wrong reasons. I was supposed to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt terrified. What if I couldn't do this? What if I got close and couldn't follow through? What if? Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He looked surprised. People probably didn't question Adrian Volkov when he asked them to dinner. "Because I'd like to get to know you better. And because you're the first person I've met in months who doesn't seem to want anything from me." If only he knew. If only he knew that I wanted everything from him. His suffering. His regret. His life. Saturday, I heard myself say. 7 o'clock. "I'll pick you up. Text your address to my assistant." He handed me a business card, his fingers brushing mine for just a second. His hands were warm. I hadn't expected that. That dinner was supposed to be the beginning of his downfall. Instead, it was the beginning of mine. He took me to a restaurant I'd only read about in magazines, the kind of place where you needed a reservation 6 months in advance and where the waiters knew exactly which fork you'd need before you did. I dressed carefully, had rehearsed conversation topics, had prepared myself to be charming and mysterious and utterly irresistible. But he was different than I'd imagined. Quieter. More thoughtful. He didn't talk about his wealth or his power or his business empire. Instead, he asked me about the books I liked, about whether I preferred the city in summer or winter, about what had made me want to work in hospitality. And when I gave him the carefully crafted answers I'd prepared, the lies about Maya Chen's fictional past, he listened like the answers actually mattered. "Tell me something real," he said over the appetizer course, his gray eyes holding mine. "Not the polished version. Something true." My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" "Everyone presents their best self on a first date. The highlight's real. But I'd rather know something that actually matters to you. Something you don't usually share." I could have deflected. Should have. But something about the way he was looking at me, not like he was trying to impress me or seduce me, but like he genuinely wanted to understand me, made me reckless. "I don't trust easily," I said, and it was the first completely honest thing I'd said to him. When someone shows me who they are, I believe them. And I don't give second chances. Something flickered across his face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. That sounds like it comes from experience. Doesn't everything? He nodded slowly. Then he said, "I grew up watching my father destroy everything he touched. Business rivals. Friendships. His own family. He believed that power meant never showing weakness, never admitting fault, never backing down. And he was miserable. Made everyone around him miserable too. I hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected vulnerability. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me something real, so I'm giving you something real back. My father died 2 years ago, and everyone expected me to become him. To run the business the same way, to use the same methods, to be just as ruthless. And I've tried so hard not to. But some days I look in the mirror and I see his face looking back at me, and I wonder if I'm just fooling myself. If violence is in my blood and there's nothing I can do about it." He told me about growing up in his father's shadow, about inheriting a business he never wanted, about trying to be better than the violence that had shaped him. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, like these were thoughts he didn't usually share. And despite everything, despite the rage I'd carried for 2 years, despite the gun I'd already purchased and hidden in my apartment, despite the plan that was supposed to end with his death, I found myself listening. Actually listening. He asked about my life, the fictional one I'd created, and listened like the answers mattered. I told him Maya's story. About growing up in California, about studying hospitality management, about wanting to create beautiful experiences for people. All lies, carefully constructed and practiced until they felt almost real. But then he said something that cut through all my careful preparation. "You seem sad sometimes," he said over dessert, his voice gentle. "Like you're carrying something heavy." My throat tightened. The chocolate mousse in front of me suddenly looked nauseating. "Doesn't everyone?" "Not like you. It's in your eyes. Like you've lost something you can't get back." I had to look away. Had to remind myself this was the man who'd destroyed my life. This was the man who'd given the order that killed Ryan, that left me empty and alone and so full of rage I'd spent 2 years transforming myself into someone else entirely. But sitting there in that restaurant, watching candlelight play across his face, listening to him talk about trying to be better than his father's legacy, it was getting harder to remember why I hated him. Harder to see him as the monster I needed him to be. "Maybe I have," I whispered. He reached across the table and took my hand. His touch was warm. Gentle. Nothing like the monster I'd built up in my head. Nothing like the man who was supposed to be a killer, a criminal, someone who ordered deaths like other people ordered coffee. "Whatever it is," he said softly, and there was something in his voice, genuine compassion, real concern, that made my chest ache. "I hope you find it again." I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to tell him he was the reason I'd lost everything. Wanted to pull my hand away and run and forget this entire insane plan. But I couldn't. Because the look in his eyes was so genuinely kind that it broke something inside me. Something I'd thought was already broken beyond repair. The months that followed were the strangest of my life. I was supposed to be playing a part, but the lines kept blurring. Adrian was attentive without being possessive. He called when he said he would. He remembered things I'd mentioned in passing, that I liked orchids, that I'd never been to the ballet, that I had a weakness for old black and white films. Generous without expecting anything in return. He'd send flowers to my office with notes that made me smile despite myself. He'd surprise me with tickets to shows I'd casually mentioned wanting to see. But he never made me feel like I owed him anything for these gestures. Never made me feel bought. He introduced me to his younger sister, Natasha, who hugged me like we were already family. She was 23, bright and warm and nothing like what I'd expected from Adrian Volkov's sister. She worked at a non-profit that helped immigrant families, and she talked about her work with a passion that was almost uncomfortable to witness. "I'm so glad Adrian finally found someone," she said the first time we met, squeezing my hands between hers. "He's been alone for so long. Too long. He deserves to be happy." I'd smiled and nodded, but inside I was screaming. Because how could the sister of a murderer be this kind? How could she look at me with such genuine warmth when her brother had destroyed my life? Took me to his mother's house for Sunday dinners where I sat at their table and felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Elena Volkov was elegant and sharp-eyed, and I'd been terrified of meeting her. But she'd welcomed me into her home, fed me food she'd spent hours preparing, asked me about my family with a gentleness that made me ache for my own mother, who I'd barely spoken to since Ryan's death because seeing her grief mixed with mine was too much to bear. "You're good for him," Elena told me once, catching me alone in her kitchen while Adrian and Natasha argued about something in the living room. "He smiles now. Real smiles. I haven't seen that since his father died. You make him happy," Natasha told me one afternoon while we were baking in her apartment. She'd invited me over, insisted we needed girl time, and now we were covered in flour and trying to make these elaborate French cookies that kept falling apart. I'd actually laughed, at our failures, at the mess we'd made, at how neither of us had any idea what we were doing. And for a moment, I'd forgotten why I was there. Forgotten the gun hidden in my closet. Forgotten the plan. "I've never seen him like this," Natasha continued, her voice soft. "Lighter, you know? Like he can actually breathe." Guilt twisted in my stomach. "I'm not that special. You are to him." She paused, looking at me with those same gray eyes Adrian had, the Volkov eyes. "He told me the other night that you're the first person who's ever made him want to be better. Made him think about getting out of the family business entirely." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Getting out? He didn't tell you?" "He's been talking to lawyers, trying to figure out how to dissolve some of the shadier parts of the business. Clean everything up. He said he wants to build something new, something he can be proud of. Something worthy of you. Getting out." The words echoed in my head for days. What if Adrian wasn't the monster I'd thought? What if the violence, the darkness, what if he was as trapped in it as I'd been trapped in my grief? What if I was about to kill a man who was trying to be better? 6 months in, Adrian kissed me for the first time. We were in his apartment, rain hammering against the windows, city lights blurred through the water streaming down the glass. We'd been talking about nothing and everything, about whether dogs were better than cats. He argued for dogs, I defended cats, about the worst movies we'd ever seen, about what we'd do if we could live anywhere in the world. Simple things. Easy things. The kind of conversation that should have been meaningless but somehow felt more intimate than anything I'd experienced in years. And then suddenly he was looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Something vulnerable and uncertain and almost afraid. "Maya," he said, his voice rough. "I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. Did he know? Had he figured it out? Had someone recognized me, connected Mayachin to Sophie Morrison, discovered that I'd been lying about everything from the moment we met? "I'm falling in love with you." The words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them back and couldn't anymore. And I know it's fast, I know I should probably wait, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. You've changed everything for me. You've made me want things I never thought I could have. A normal life. A family. A future that isn't built on my father's legacy. I should have pulled away. Should have remembered the plan. Should have thought about Ryan, about the grief, about the 2 years I'd spent preparing for this moment. But instead, I kissed him. Kissed him like I was drowning and he was air. Kissed him like I meant it. Because God help me, I did mean it. I love you too, I whispered against his lips, and I realized with a shock that it was true. Somewhere between the revenge and the lies, I'd fallen in love with Adrian Volkov. The man I was supposed to destroy. The man who'd destroyed me. How was that even possible? How could I love the man who'd killed my husband? How could I want a future with the person I'd spent 2 years planning to murder? And what the hell was I supposed to do now? The year that followed was the happiest of my life, which made it the most confusing. I'd stopped thinking about revenge. Stopped planning his downfall. I'd wake up next to him and feel something that wasn't grief or rage but something softer, something that felt dangerously close to peace. But I couldn't fully let go. Couldn't fully trust it. Because under everything was the knowledge that this was all built on a lie. That I wasn't Maya, wasn't the woman he thought he loved. That if he ever found out the truth, it would shatter us both. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked me one night. We were in bed, his arms around me, his breath warm against my neck. "Nothing important." "You do that sometimes." "Go somewhere I can't follow." "Old habit." "Maya." He turned me to face him. "Whatever you're running from, whatever you're afraid of, you know you can tell me, right? There's nothing you could say that would make me love you less." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to test it right there, lay it all out and see if we'd survive. But I was too much of a coward. Too afraid of losing the one good thing I'd found in 10 years of darkness. I know, I lied. I love you. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. That made 2 of us. Everything changed on a Tuesday night in October. Adrian had been tense for weeks, distracted in a way that worried me. His phone rang constantly. He had late-night meetings in his study with men whose eyes were hard and cold. Something was wrong in his world, but he kept telling me not to worry about it. "There's a situation with a rival organization," he finally admitted one evening. "They've been making moves into our territory. Someone's feeding them information, someone who knows how we operate. That's dangerous. It's more than dangerous. It's personal." He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "We have a rat. Someone I trusted. And when I find out who..." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I'd seen enough of his world by then to know what happened to traitors. 3 days later, everything I thought I knew turned to ash. Adrian had called me to his office, said he needed to see me, that it was urgent. When I got there, the door was slightly open. I could hear voices inside. Adrian's and someone else's. Someone whose voice made my blood run cold even though I couldn't quite place why. "The intel was good," the other voice said. "We hit 3 of their warehouses last night. They never saw it coming." "And you're sure they don't know where it came from?" "Positive. I've been careful. 10 years careful." I pushed the door open without thinking. Needed to see who was speaking with that familiar cadence, that tone I'd heard 1,000 times in my dreams. And there he was. Ryan. My dead husband. Standing in Adrian's office like he belonged there. Older, harder looking, but unmistakably him. The man I'd mourned. The man I'd changed my entire life to avenge. "Maya." Adrian smiled when he saw me, oblivious to the fact that my world was ending. Perfect timing. I want you to meet someone. This is Liam, he's been helping us with the situation I mentioned. Liam, this is Maya. The woman I told you about. Liam. Not Ryan. But the way his face went white when our eyes met told me everything I needed to know. We've met, Ryan, Liam, whatever his name was, said quietly. You have? Adrian looked between us, confused. A long time ago, I managed to say. Different life. The room felt like it was tilting. Questions were exploding in my head so fast I couldn't sort them. Ryan was alive. Ryan had been alive this entire time. Ryan was working with Adrian. Which meant. You should go, Ryan said to Adrian. Your mother called. Said it was urgent. It was a lie. I could see it in the tension around his eyes, the slight edge to his voice. But Adrian nodded, kissed my cheek, and left the room. The second the door closed, I lunged at him. You're alive. My voice was shaking. You've been alive this whole time. Sophie. Don't call me that. You don't get to call me that. You let me think you were dead. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You had a choice to tell me, to take me with you, to not let me spend 10 years destroying myself over a ghost. Adrian would have killed you. Ryan's voice rose to match mine. He killed my brother. That's why I faked my death, why I took the money and disappeared. He would have come after you to get to me, and I couldn't let that happen. The words hit me like a physical blow. Your brother? David. He worked for the Volkovs. Got in over his head, tried to skim from the profits. Adrian found out and. He swallowed hard. They found David's body in the river. Same way they'd find mine if I hadn't run. So you let me think you were dead. You let me grieve. You let me, I couldn't finish. Couldn't tell him that I'd spent 10 years planning revenge against the man he was now working for. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I thought about reaching out so many times, but it was safer if you thought I was gone. Safer for you. Safer? I laughed, and it came out bitter. You destroyed me. And then you what, came back to work for Adrian? The man who killed your brother? It's complicated. I needed to, he stopped, his eyes narrowing. Wait. How did you end up with Adrian? What are you doing here? My mouth went dry. How could I possibly explain? But I didn't have to. I watched understanding dawn on his face, watched him piece it together, my new name, my new life, my relationship with Adrian. You were trying to kill him, Ryan whispered. You thought he killed me, so you got close to him for revenge. I couldn't deny it. Couldn't defend it. Could barely breathe. Does he know? No. Sophie. I said don't call me that. Tears were burning my eyes now. You don't get to call me that. You're not my husband. You're just someone who looks like a man I used to know. I'm still. Still what? Still sorry? Still thinking about me? I don't care. The words were coming faster now, 10 years of grief and rage pouring out all at once. You left me. You let me turn into someone I don't even recognize. And for what? So you could come back and work for the enemy? So you could, I stopped, a horrible thought occurring to me. The blonde woman. At your apartment. Who is she? His silence was answer enough. You're married. Engaged. Her name is Claire. We met 3 years ago in Boston, Get out. Sophie, please. Get out before I scream. Before I tell Adrian everything. Before I burn both of our lives down just to watch them burn. He looked at me for a long moment, something like grief in his eyes. Then he left. I sank into Adrian's desk chair, my whole body shaking. Ryan was alive. My husband, no, my ex-husband, that's what he was now even if there'd never been a divorce, was alive and engaged to someone else. Had been alive and building a new life while I was building a weapon out of my grief. And Adrian. God, Adrian. The man I loved. Because I did love him, I couldn't deny that anymore. But he'd killed Ryan's brother. Might have killed others. Was exactly the kind of man I'd thought he was before I got to know him. Wasn't he? Or had I been so blinded by love that I'd ignored the truth? Ignored the violence, the danger, the reality of who Adrian Volkov actually was? I didn't know anymore. Didn't know anything except that I was caught between two men, one I'd thought was dead and one I'd thought was a monster, and neither of them was who I'd believed. I made it 3 days before the pressure became unbearable. 3 days of pretending everything was normal while my mind spun in circles. Adrian knew something was wrong, I could see it in the way he watched me, the careful way he asked if I was okay, but I couldn't tell him. Couldn't figure out how to explain that my dead husband was alive and working for him under a fake name. And then Adrian's world exploded. There's been a security breach, he told me one evening, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Someone accessed our financial records. Copied everything. Client lists, account numbers, all of it. My stomach dropped. Who? I don't know yet. But when I find them. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. 2 hours later, he found them. Found Ryan. Or Liam. Found the flash drive in his apartment, the evidence of betrayal spelled out in ones and zeros. I got the call at midnight. Come to the warehouse on 5th, Adrian said. His voice was cold. Empty. Now. I'd never heard him sound like that before. Never heard that particular edge that said something terrible was about to happen. The warehouse was one I'd never been to. Dark, industrial, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one asked questions. Adrian's men were stationed at every exit. And in the center of the space, tied to a chair with blood running from a cut above his eye, was Ryan. Adrian, I started. Did you know? He turned to me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. That's all I need to know right now, Maya. Did you know he was stealing from us? No. I swear, I didn't know about any of this. But you knew him. It wasn't a question. He called you Sophie. Everything stopped. The warehouse, the world, my heart. He knew. Tell me I'm wrong, Adrian said quietly. Tell me you're not his wife. Tell me this isn't all connected. I couldn't. The truth was written all over my face. She didn't know about the files, Ryan said from his chair, his voice thick with pain. She's got nothing to do with this, Adrian. Whatever you're going to do it to me. Leave her alone. Leave her alone? Adrian laughed, sharp and humorless. She's been lying to me for over a year. Using a fake name, building a fake life, pretending to love me while, he stopped, his jaw working. Why? Just tell me why. This was it. The moment everything came apart. The moment I had to choose between the truth and the last shreds of who I'd tried to be. I thought you killed him, I said quietly. 10 years ago. They told me Ryan was dead, that you'd ordered it. So I changed everything about myself. I became Maya. I got close to you because I wanted revenge. I wanted you to fall in love with me so I could destroy you the way you destroyed me. And did I? Fall in love with you? Yes. And did you fall in love with me? Or was it all part of the plan? My eyes burned with tears I was too stubborn to let fall. I didn't plan on that part. I didn't plan on you being kind. Being real. Being someone I couldn't finish. Someone you could what? Love? Is that what you were going to say? His voice cracked on the word. Because I loved you, Maya. Or Sophie. Or whoever the hell you actually are. I loved you so completely that I was going to leave everything for you. Was going to walk away from the family, from this life, from all of it. Just to be worthy of you. The words hit me like bullets. Each one finding its mark, each one true. I'm sorry. You're sorry. He shook his head slowly. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this, he gestured between us, between me and Ryan, between all the lies. What this has cost. I never meant to fall in love with you. I tried not to. I tried so hard to remember why I hated you, but you made it impossible. You were nothing like I thought you'd be. Because I'm not a monster? Despite what you convinced yourself to justify this? Adrian's hands were shaking now. I didn't kill your husband, Sophie. I didn't even know he existed. The hit on Ryan's car was meant for his brother. David took Ryan's car that morning without telling anyone. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong brother. We realized the mistake too late. The warehouse tilted. What? It was an accident. A horrible, tragic accident that I've regretted every day since. David was stealing from us, yes, but Ryan, he was never a target. Never even on my radar. I looked at Ryan. Watched him close his eyes, his face contorted with something that might have been grief or rage or both. You knew, I whispered to Ryan. You knew it was supposed to be your brother, and you let me think. I was scared, Ryan said. I found out what David was doing, knew they were coming for him. When he took my car, when the hit happened, I saw my chance. Chance to disappear, to start over somewhere the Volkovs couldn't reach me. So you just left. Let me mourn. Let me destroy my entire life. I thought you'd move on. I thought after a few months, maybe a year, you'd heal and be better off without me. Better off? The laugh that came out of me was broken. I became a weapon, Ryan. I turned myself into a stranger. I spent 10 years planning murder because I thought the love of my life was dead. And all of it, was based on a lie you were too much of a coward to correct. I'm sorry. Don't. I turned back to Adrian. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I've destroyed whatever we had. But I need you to know that it was real. What I felt for you, what we built together, that was the realest thing in my life. More real than my marriage ever was. Adrian's face was unreadable. And yet you came here tonight with a gun in your purse. I froze. I'd forgotten about the gun. Had carried it every day for weeks now, waiting for the right moment, unable to let go of the plan even after I'd stopped wanting to execute it. I wasn't going to use it. Weren't you? No. I mean, maybe I was. I don't know anymore. The truth spilled out before I could stop it. I don't know who I am without the revenge. Without the grief. Without the anger. You made me want to be someone different, someone better. But I didn't know how to let go of who I'd become. And now? Now I'm just lost. I'm caught between Sophie, who loved Ryan, and Maya, who loves you, and neither of them feels real anymore. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything that had been said and everything that couldn't be unsaid. Please, Ryan said from his chair. Whatever you're going to do to me, fine. But let her go. She's been through enough. You don't get to decide that, Adrian said coldly. Then, to his men, cut him loose. What? Ryan and I spoke at the same time. I said cut him loose. Get him out of here. Out of the city. Out of my sight. Adrian's voice was ice. You stole from me, betrayed me, cost me millions. But I'm not my father. I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am. His eyes found mine. Or maybe I'm just too tired to keep playing that part. Ryan was untied, pulled to his feet. He looked at me one last time, and I saw a stranger looking back. Someone I'd loved once, in another lifetime. Someone I'd grieved and rebuilt myself around. But not someone I knew anymore. Goodbye, Ryan, I said softly. He nodded. And then he was gone, escorted out by men who'd make sure he kept running and never looked back. Which left me and Adrian alone in that warehouse, with a decade of lies between us and nothing left to hide behind. I should hate you, Adrian said finally. You should. I should never want to see you again. You shouldn't. But I can't. His voice broke on the words. I can't hate you. I can't stop loving you. And that might be the cruelest part of all of this. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Adrian. Don't. Just don't. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. I need time. Space. I need to figure out if there's any way to forgive this. To forgive you. To forgive myself for being stupid enough to fall for someone who wanted me dead. I didn't. Not in the end. But you did in the beginning. And how do I ever trust that you won't wake up one day and remember that? Remember what you came here to do? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know if you can. I don't know if I deserve that trust. All I know is that I love you. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if you give me the chance. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw everything in his eyes, love and betrayal, hope and devastation, the war between what he felt and what he knew. Who are you? He asked. Really? I don't know anymore. But I want to find out. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not running from grief or toward revenge. When I'm just me. And you think I'm part of that? I think you're the only person who's ever seen me. Really seen me. Even when I was lying, even when I was pretending, you saw something real underneath. Something I'd forgotten existed. Adrian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. I can't do this right now, he said. I can't be here, looking at you, feeling like this. I need you to go. Okay. But Sophie, my real name in his voice felt like a wound and a healing all at once. This isn't goodbye. This is just, I don't know what this is. But it's not goodbye. What is it then? It's me asking you to figure out who you are. Who you really are, without the revenge, without the lies. And when you do, if you still love me, if this is still real, maybe we can find a way back to each other. And if I can't figure it out? Then at least you'll be free. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, the woman I fell in love with, my Sophie, whoever she was brave and strong and beautiful. I hope you find her again. I hope you find yourself. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the warehouse where everything had come apart. I stood there for a long time, crying in the darkness. Mourning Ryan for the second time. Mourning Adrian even though he was still alive. Mourning the versions of myself I'd built and destroyed trying to survive my own grief. But somewhere in all that mourning, something else stirred. Something that felt almost like relief. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't pretending to be anyone. Wasn't hiding behind revenge or lies or a carefully constructed identity. I was just me. Broken and honest and completely stripped bare. And maybe that's what I needed to be. Maybe that's where healing actually started, not with revenge or even love, but with the courage to stop running from who I really was. 3 months later, I was standing outside Adrian's apartment building. My hair was its natural color again, light brown, not the black I'd dyed it. I'd left the hotel job, started seeing a therapist, begun the slow process of untangling 10 years of grief and rage and loss. I wasn't fully healed. Probably never would be. But I was better. More honest. More like the person I'd been before Ryan's death, or before his fake death, had shattered me. And I'd realized something important: I didn't need Adrian to be whole. But I wanted him. Wanted the chance to build something real, something not based on lies or revenge but on truth. If he'd let me. I pressed the buzzer. Yes. His voice through the intercom made my heart race. It's Sophie. I know I don't have the right to be here. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I found her. The woman you asked me to find. And I needed you to know that she still loves you. She'll always love you. Even if you can't love her back. The silence stretched so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, come up. My hands shook as I rode the elevator. Shook worse as I knocked on his door. And when it opened, when I saw him standing there looking tired and heartbroken and somehow still beautiful, I felt everything all over again. Hi, I whispered. Hi. He stepped back, letting me in. You changed your hair. Back to the original color. Thought it was time to stop hiding. It suits you. He moved to the window, looking out at the city. I've been thinking about you. About us. About whether what we had could survive the truth. And? I don't know yet. He turned to face me. But I know I want to try. I know that even after everything, even knowing who you are and why you came into my life, I still love you. I love your strength. Your honesty. Even your capacity for revenge, because it means you loved that deeply once. I love you more than I ever loved him, I said. That's what I figured out. Ryan was my first love, my safe love. But you challenged me. Changed me. Made me want to be better even when I was trying to destroy you. We're quite a pair, aren't we? A woman who wanted me dead and a man from the world that broke her. Maybe that's what makes us work. We both know how dark life can be. How messy. How complicated. He crossed the room, stopped inches from me. If we do this, if we try again, it has to be different. No more secrets. No more lies. Just us, as we really are. Just us, I agreed. Sophie and Adrian. Starting over. Starting over, he echoed. Then he kissed me, and it felt like coming home and starting fresh all at once. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We had hard days ahead. Days where the past crept in and made us question everything. Days where trust felt impossible and love felt like a battlefield. But we had truth now. Had honesty. Had two people who'd been broken by lies choosing instead to be brave enough for something real. I'd spent 10 years grieving a ghost and loving a lie. I'd spent another year building my entire existence around revenge. And in the end, I'd found something I never expected: redemption in the arms of the man I'd wanted to destroy, who somehow taught me how to stop destroying myself. Why him, of all people? Maybe because we both understood loss. Both knew what it was like to be haunted. Both recognized that love isn't always clean or simple or easy. Or maybe because the best love stories aren't the ones that start perfect. They're the ones that start broken and choose, day after day, to keep trying. To keep being honest. To keep loving even when it hurts. And in the end, standing in Adrian's apartment with 10 years of grief finally behind me and an uncertain future ahead, I realized something profound. I hadn't just been trying to destroy him. I'd been trying to destroy my own pain, my own grief, my own fear of moving forward. But you can't destroy pain. You can only walk through it until you reach the other side. And on the other side, if you're lucky, someone is waiting who sees you, really sees you, in all your broken, complicated, beautiful truth. What are you thinking? Adrian asked, his arms around me. That I spent 10 years looking for revenge when what I really needed was forgiveness. Forgiveness for Ryan? For lying to me? For myself. For letting grief turn me into someone I didn't recognize. For wasting all those years on hate when I could have been healing. He pressed his forehead to mine. We're all just doing our best with the broken pieces we're given. I know. But now I want to do better than my best. I want to choose love over revenge. Choose truth over lies. Choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. Even knowing where I come from? What I've done? Especially knowing. Because you're choosing to be better too. We can do that together. And we did. Day by day, choice by choice, we built something real from the ashes of everything that had burned. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. And it was true. And in the end, that was enough.